welcome to our live IBS cooking show. I'll be your host, and we have Heather Von Voorhis, the creator of Heather Tummy Care and author of best-selling book, Eating for IBS. Hi, Heather. How are you?
Hi, Deb. I'm great. How are you? How was your Thanksgiving?
It was nice and peaceful. It was really relaxing. How about yourself?
Same.
Yes?
Best kind of holidays.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
And I used our own tip about using a smaller plate. Now, I'm not saying that's the only plate I ate, but it helped pace. It definitely.
It does.
Yeah.
It really does.
So that was really neat. So just before I forget, we are still having the extended, thanks to your husband, Will, thanks for asking him, to extend the Black Friday sale. So if you're interested, click on the link below. I highly recommend, we're gonna be talking about Heather's book. I have my own right here, Eating for IBS. I have one up here on display, but this is the one that I go to. That's why it's worn out with all its notes and whatnot. But 30% off, it's going on right now until tonight, but then it's gone. So this is a great time. Okay, Heather, you know I'm an actual professional chef. Oops, my earpiece just fell out. Hold on, live show, okay. So I'm a professional chef where I've been cooking most of my life for pleasure, and then I got trained. And now I've around the world. I've been humbled and so blessed to be able to experience these wonderful, creative chefs, and I've learned so much from them. With that said, Heather, your book, now I will have to say, from a chef's perspective, you know, I'm always curious. What's this all about? From a health perspective, I'm very open to finding out when people have certain needs. You have done of understanding the specificity of IBS specific. People don't talk about this out there, and in the health industry, there's a lot of talk, and we're going to get into that today. There's a lot of talk about what you should do for a healthy gut. It's a very popular topic right now, wouldn't you say, Heather?
Yeah, getting a lot more attention all the time, I think, particularly with all the gut microbiome news that's coming out. So yeah, getting a lot of press.
A lot of press. So this right here, if you are an IBS sufferer, this needs to be your foundation to your food, because I haven't found anything out there like this. And because of what I know in cooking, there are things that Heather knows because of her 40 years of managing IBS, because of her experiments, and I can tell you have done your due diligence in your recipes here. So from a chef's point of view, bravo, Heather. I just want to get that out of the way.
Well, thanks.
And I don't have to say that. Yeah, I can tell. And that's what happens when chefs get together. It's this love of cooking. It doesn't matter what you're into. We all have a respect for one another. It's really neat to see.
Yeah.
So before we get into before we get into the fun snacks here, which I had a wonderful time doing, we're going to start talking about gluten and IBS. It's a hot topic right now. There's a lot of confusion out there. But first, my assistant, BJ, is waving something. Is there a question?
No, there's a lot of people chiming in. Julia says, hi, Heather.
Julie says, hi, Heather. Awesome. So we have a lot of people joining us. Great. And this is your opportunity to ask Heather questions live. Right now, I've got my assistant, BJ. He's on the computer. As you can see, I'm in my kitchen. I'm behind the counter. Heather's right there, full of knowledge, ready to guide us. So we're here live. This is your opportunity to chime in and type in your questions there. And when BJ waves at me, then I'll go, okay, we have a question, but we'll continue from there.
Okay.
Okay, so gluten and IBS, I don't even know where to begin. So Heather, help us understand what we need to know about gluten and IBS from your experience.
Sure. In a nutshell, the most important point, I think, is that there's absolutely nothing to show that IBS carries any kind of gluten intolerance at all. That is not a fair blanket statement to make.
Okay.
So you can have gluten intolerance, you can have IBS. They're two different things. You could have both. But it's not a fair statement to say that because you have IBS, you are gluten intolerant. There's actually nothing to support that at all. So that's a good kind of baseline fact to get out of the way. And then you can move on to the people who might be dealing with both or who might be misdiagnosed with IBS and actually have a gluten intolerance, and particularly celiac, which is an autoimmune disorder.
Right.
So got to get a firm diagnosis first.
Okay. And how is the medical community, because I know you deal with them, you have been dealing with them quite often. What can an IBS sufferer, what's something that they should know, or maybe a question they should be asking their doctor so they don't assume something? Is there something that you can equip them with, of like maybe a question to ask their doctor?
Sure. I mean, anyone who's been diagnosed with IBS should, if they don't already know the answer to this, should ask their doctor, did you rule out celiac? That is the proper name for gluten intolerance. It is a genetic autoimmune disorder that causes your body to treat gluten as a foreign invader, and you will literally produce antibodies to gluten. They will start with a blood test, and they will check your blood for antibodies to gluten. An important caveat here is you have to be eating gluten regularly for at least 6 weeks before you take that test, or you can get a false negative. So you don't actually want to go gluten-free before you have the test for gluten intolerance. You really want to know what you're doing with this. You want to get an accurate test result. So no one can be diagnosed with IBS until they have ruled out celiac, because they can cause the exact same symptoms. And there's no way to just look at you and say, it's celiac, it's IBS. They have to do a blood test initially. Depending on the results of the blood test, they may have to do a small bowel biopsy to confirm that diagnosis. So it's important, if you have IBS, you need to know that you don't have celiac. Or if you have both, you need to know that as well. So ask your doc, did you test me for celiac? Did you do a gluten intolerance test? Did you do that blood test? That's a fair question. Okay.
Beautiful. I love that. And nice clarity on that. So maybe if you don't assume just because you're diagnosed with IBS, it falls under you're also gluten. It needs to be clarified if you're somebody who happens to have that as well. Yes?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Need to find that out. Don't make the assumption that you're gluten intolerant just because you have IBS. Don't make the assumption they have ruled out gluten intolerance. You need to ask and make sure they have run that test. And then know what you're dealing with. Is it one thing? Is it both things? You can certainly manage both at the same time.
Okay.
But get firm information first.
Okay, and you just actually answered a question that we had earlier when we posted about our live cooking show. The question came in, Peggy was saying, gluten is absolutely the main trigger for my IBS. Stopped using gluten about 5 years ago when and she's never regretted it. So when we see that kind of comment, is it safe to then go, okay, let me translate. Yes, she is IBS, was diagnosed with IBS, but then she happens to also be gluten.
It could be. It's hard to give a really brief answer to this because there's a lot of details that can be really important for people's health. Okay. I mean, first of all, I'd want her to find out, did they ever test her for celiac in the first place? Because if she wasn't ever tested and then she went gluten-free and her symptoms resolved, she might have celiac. And she might not have IBS, or she has both, because celiac often leads to IBS. It's a chronic insult to the gut. Then you develop IBS. Now you have two problems. Okay. So that's a bad position to be in, because you don't want to then start eating gluten if you really have celiac and start triggering problems. But at the same time, you're going to have a really hard time getting a firm diagnosis of celiac if you've been gluten-free, and you will get false negatives to the tests. Okay. Celiac is a big deal. It's not just, I can't eat wheat, gluten kind of bothers me. Celiac can kill you. It can literally cause brain damage, reproductive damage. It can cause, it's a disease. It can cause joint issues, skin issues. Sometimes people have no GI symptoms at all with celiac. Okay. It can really be a chameleon. You can have a lot of silent damage. Okay. So you need to know for sure if you have celiac, and if you do, it is also a big deal to deal with. It's not just going gluten-free in foods or wheat-free.
Okay.
There's gluten hidden in a lot of things people wouldn't suspect. It can be used as a binder in things like pills, maybe prescriptions. Okay. It can be used in things like food coatings for food packaging and processing. You may be sensitive to eating places where they're using the same cooking equipment for gluten-containing foods and non-gluten. People can have really extreme reactions to minute portions of gluten. So you need to know if you have celiac. You need to know if you truly have this disease, and you need to go gluten-free because it can be a lot more involved than just trying to make sure you're following a gluten-free diet, particularly on a more casual level. It can be an extremely serious disorder. You need to get diagnosed for it. You really should have the test for it before you decide to go gluten-free. And then you can deal with it. But it would be, red flags would go up if somebody says, I have IBS and nothing worked until I went gluten-free. I would be very concerned that they really have celiac and they hadn't been diagnosed.
That's what I'm getting from listening to you right now, Heather, is we say it over and over. You talk about it in your books. You talk about it in the community. To be able to have the IBS conversation and to live managing the IBS, you need to have that doctor's diagnosis that you do have IBS and not self-diagnose. So now what I'm hearing as nice and clear, you need to be able to rule out celiac disease. It's not a just assume it's a gluten, okay, I'll just stay away. It's a disease. And like you stated, there's other things that could happen. So that needs to be looked at just as serious as being diagnosed for IBS. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, it does. I mean, in some ways it's I don't want to it is a far more serious disease. It can literally cause complications that kill you. And again, it has a genetic component. So if you are positive for celiac, other people in your family should be screened. If you have children, they should be screened. If one of your children has celiac, you should be screened. So anybody who knows there's celiac in their family, the whole family should be screened. And really, if it's in your family, children should be screened at birth. It should be a routine test. You need to know as soon as possible if you have celiac.
Perfect. Great. Thank you, Heather. BJ has what's our question?
Hi, Heather. Dave, he emailed help@helpforidbs.com, and him, along with a lot of other people, I think their questions came from, they've heard all the scares about gluten and everything, but they're wondering, well, why do I eat one item that has gluten in it and it does nothing to me, and I eat another item that has gluten and it does bother me? And they're actually realizing themselves, like, well, wait a second, the item that bothered me, it didn't just have gluten, it had other stuff in it. So Dave wants to know, do you think that a lot of people are misdiagnosing themselves? They're actually eating foods that have gluten and a lot of other IBS triggers.
Were you able to catch that, Heather, or do you want me to highlight?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a loaded question.
That's a good question from Dave. Yes. Right on. Yeah, loaded question, complicated question.
But reality.
So, I mean, in and of itself, that would kind of point to the fact that it's not gluten that's bothering you then. If it bothers you sometimes but not other times, it's probably not the gluten. It probably is other things in the food. And this can also go two ways. So gluten is a protein. It's not a FODMAP. That's another area of confusion for people on the low FODMAPs diet. FODMAPs are carbohydrates. Gluten is a protein, two totally different things. So if you have a problem with gluten, it's a protein found in grains, wheat, other grains as well. But IBS can react to wheat. It can react to the wheat bran, the insoluble fiber in wheat. You might get really sick from something like all bran cereal or whole grain, whole wheat bread. And it has nothing to do with gluten. It's the bran. That's really typical for IBS. If you remove the bran, you're left with refined flour or white flour used to make white breads like French bread or sourdough bread, or used to make all kinds of pasta and noodles. Those can be great, safe, soluble fiber foundation foods for IBS. They have gluten, but they don't have bran. They're wheat, but they're not whole wheat. So that may be a really good, safe staple for you. If you do really well with those foods, that's an indication that gluten is not a problem for you. There's also fructans in wheat. Fructans are a FODMAP. They're a type of carbohydrate. They're also found in garlic and onions. you might have a fructan sensitivity, and then you're reacting to that, separate from the gluten.
Right.
So wheat can be a very complicated food for people with IBS. The safest way to start is with like a good fresh white bread. How do you do with French bread and sourdough bread? How do you do with a plain bowl of noodles?
Let's talk about that, because I have examples here. So let's talk about the things that are a good way to realize what's typically safe when you're dealing with IBS. If these things trigger, then again, it may be a whole nother category. So let's talk about, you don't have celiac. You know you don't have celiac. Where do we go to for our carbohydrates to be safe for IBS? So you mentioned French bread.
You want your soluble fiber foundation foods. Yep.
Okay.
French bread.
Okay. What else?
Yep. Sourdough bread.
Okay.
Sourdough bread, English muffins, bagels, noodles, any kind of pasta.
Okay. What about tortillas?
All good. Flour tortillas also. Anything that's made with white flour has the bran removed. And there's nothing in white flour that's not also in whole wheat flour. So sometimes people think that white flour is going to be actively bad for them.
Right.
There's literally nothing in white flour that's not also in whole wheat flour. It's just they remove the bran. Yeah, the bran's good for you, but if it sets you off because you have IBS, it's not good for you in particular.
Exactly.
So, you may not be able to tolerate whole wheat and wheat bran. That's okay.
Right.
There's other whole grains you probably have more tolerance for.
Okay.
But yeah, flour tortillas can be a great safe staple. Corn tortillas too.
Okay.
Different
Beautiful.
Option, but
Taco Tuesdays. Here we go. Now, a lot of times, Heather, when you see or read or listen to people or us talking about white bread, the first thing that comes to mind is the Wonder white bread. And somebody's mind might think, how in the world could that be a good thing or safe for me to eat? What are your thoughts on that?
It's not. You shouldn't eat Wonder bread. You shouldn't eat any bread that really
Bravo!
has anything in it besides
I knew I loved you, Heather. Let's get rid of this Wonder bread.
Yes. The IBS issue. That's right. No, really, you should be able to find a good bread that's got water, flour, yeast, and salt.
Did you hear that, everyone?
Water, flour, a starter instead of yeast.
Exactly, which is the sourdough.
Water, flour, yeast, and salt.
Exactly, which is the sourdough.
Yeah, or sourdough will have a starter instead of yeast.
Yep, that's like the base of it. And it's the beautiful thing. I don't know how many French people there are, but when we were living in France, I was teaching at a gym. I'm not kidding you. They came in to class and had their fresh baguettes in their bags ready to enjoy after class. And in America, it's like, oh no, it's like, they know.
It's hard to find.
Right. Yeah. And that baguette tomorrow at that same time is no good because there's no preservatives in it, because it's fresh, because it's made with everyday basic ingredients that don't, right? So I love that. So baguette it up and don't assume, don't fall in the category of white bread and think of what you traditionally know as white bread. Understand, like Heather's explaining. That's why this book, Eating for IBS, is so vital when you're living and managing your IBS. She's got this all here in her book, and it takes time to absorb, again, because the health industry has its own version. It's a health industry. It's an industry. You got to remember, it's an industry. It's a money-making industry. And there's a lot of fads, and we all see them come and go. We get asked the questions so often in our IBS community. So just keep the eyes open, pay attention, and understand how IBS works and how you work with your IBS. So that's great. So if anybody has any more questions on that, of course, chime in. But Heather, goodness, if you realize, oh my goodness, Heather has given me so much information, you are more than welcome to rewind this video and listen to it and listen to Heather say this over and over again until it soaks in and it's part of your knowledge. Sometimes it just takes time, especially if we learn things a certain way.
It's complicated.
Exactly. Like stay away from baguettes. No, bring them back. So that's a good thing.
Bring them back. So bring them back. And read ingredients. Don't assume the bread's safe. Read the ingredients.
That's right. Especially if you're buying a pre-made. That's a whole nother topic, right?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
It is. Yes, it is. And the other option too, if you can't find good bakery breads, sometimes you can get a bread machine and just make your own. That can be a better and sometimes cheaper option even for people.
It's really not that difficult. And what we're going to do right now, which I've done today, and I'm being tortured, Heather, because I made your brown sugar banana bread. Hi.
Oh, that's a good one. That was my grandmother's.
Oh my goodness. So of course, you, as I share it, I follow it by the T first time I do it. And I wanted to show everyone out there, this is a live cooking show. I just made this for the first time. I like to challenge myself. I like to okay, I'm gonna let y'all know that if something goes wrong or if I fail miserably, A, I'm human. B, when you're baking, you've got humidity you're dealing with. Where I'm at, it's gonna rain tomorrow, but not now. So there's a lot of things in there. So I want to share with you, if you're doing these things, this was the easiest recipe. Heather said, just go ahead and put all the dry ingredients in a bowl and then go ahead and do the wet ingredients, stir them together. Once that's mixed, seriously, if you're not a cook, if you're not in the kitchen, oh, please try this recipe. I think you're really going to enjoy it. But you want to see what happened with my experiment here?
Yeah.
Right. Yes. And I'm dying. I haven't tasted it, but I will show you this.
Oh.
So I have a mixer. I pulled it out and I want to show, because I left it, because Heather, it smells so good. So I don't know if y'all can see that.
Yes.
This is a real batter.
Yeah,
this
banana bread's a favorite.
Heather is not making recipes that are not legit. This is a legitimate bread batter here. Banana bread batter. I love it. It smells divine. Of course, I had completely ripe, because she stated, where are my skins?
Yeah.
I'm going to show you. Make sure, you stated that, and make sure. Talk about why it should be so ripe so they understand. Why do we need those skins so ripe? The sugars,
the
natural
will not come out if they're not all black and smushy.
It won't.
Yeah.
And you're going to say, what's wrong with...
Very soft. Overripe, even.
Yes, exactly. So if they are not brown, I think you said black. I think you said black in your book here.
Pretty much black. If they're not black, just wait.
Just wait.
Wait till they turn black.
You wait. And so I could not show you an...
turn out if they're not overripe.
Exactly. So I couldn't show you an example of bananas because these aren't ripe yet. So, and we eat bananas all the time. But this, my friend, so excited about this. Okay, we're talking about snacks. We're talking about being prepared, managing IBS, being proactive, having things around you that you can enjoy. Again, easiest recipe. So I took my little pie pins here and oh yes, Heather, this is amazing. Okay, I have to put this on display. I am so happy with that. First time around, I did the temperature, it's 40, let me see here, 50 to 60 minutes, but because I didn't do an actual loaf, that would have taken longer because the loaf is solid and these are a little bit smaller. So they didn't, I wanted to make sure I didn't overdo them. Look at the bottom of this.
Right.
This is called a wonderful recipe, guys. I'm so happy.
That's a favorite recipe for kids too. If you have kids you're trying to deal with IBS.
Exactly.
Or cook for yourself, but have kids that you want to be able to feed the same foods to. Banana bread is a really good safe staple to go through. That everybody likes banana bread. It's pretty hard to find folks who don't like it.
I don't think I've met one. And I also used my popover pan. And so easy. So I didn't do the cupcake version of it. I did my popovers because they're nice and deep. Oh my goodness.
Right.
There's the come out.
That would work.
Put these in a baggie and then have them in the freezer, and then you can just pop them up and warm them up whenever you want them. Hello.
You can pull one out for breakfast.
Oh my gosh. Divine. And know what I'm going to do, Heather?
It's also a good recipe for snacks.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. So what I'm going to do is I have private clients that I cook for. So whenever it's on the menu for a banana bread, I'm making your IBS-friendly. Oh. They'll never know because it is scrumptious. That's how awesome this is.
Oh, glad you liked it. Glad you liked it. Yeah, and quick breads can be a really good way, not just for a good soluble fiber staple, but it's a really good way to incorporate your fruits and veggies. Red bananas or a pumpkin quick bread, zucchini quick bread.
Zucchini,
it's a really good way to get fruits and veggies in your diet.
Oh, I do have to admit, I did stray one little ingredient. I added cinnamon. I did. I was making that. I did.
You could adjust that any way you wanted. I like nutmeg in my banana bread. If you don't like nutmeg, use cinnamon. You could do allspice, cloves. You can omit the spices if you don't like them at all. No problem with the recipe there at all.
Because what I saw and what Heather's teaching me is that even though you're taking out the egg yolk, you have the whites. So you're taking out the fat, the egg yolk, you can add the flavor. The flavor is the seasoning. Seasoning for this one is the, your cinnamon and whatnot. BJ has a question, another question from our...
Can you use the tummy fiber in the recipe?
Yes, let me go over the recipe. I got so excited last time. This is on the website, but it's also in her book here. So it is the brown sugar banana bread, and basically all it was some flour here, 2 tablespoons of Heather's soluble fiber. So we did put some soluble fiber in there, good amount. That was a nice decent amount of that. It's 30% off right now, guys. 30% off all these items right over here. Black Friday ends at midnight tonight. This stuff is what you're using constantly, because what have we learned in our IBS community? Soluble fiber in our gut 24/7, and it's just so easy to incorporate it. So we have baking powder.
And the ratio, if you are regularly baking, you can always add 1 level tablespoon of the tummy fiber per 1 level cup of flour. That's a pretty standard measurement that will work well for quick breads across the board. And the one kind of neat thing for using the tummy fiber for baking is it's not just going to give you extra soluble fiber, but it literally has some pretty cool food chemistry properties. So it will make things denser, fudgier, and moister, which is exactly what you want in something like banana bread or pumpkin bread or safe brownies. It's going to give you that fudgy, rich, moist texture that you want in those kinds of baked goods. And it actually, weirdly, is going to help keep them fresh longer.
Because it's called a natural preservative. It's nature's way to do so. There's nothing.
Yeah, it is. It's used commercially for that reason. It will actually help keep baked goods fresh longer. And it really helps too when you are lowering the fat in quick breads and you're upping the moisture through things like extra banana puree, extra zucchini, extra pumpkin. It's going to increase that sort of moist and rich feeling that fat would normally provide. So it's a good way to substitute and get extra soluble.
Great point here, because we're learning about, not necessarily eating foods off the shelf because we're understanding that preservatives, we don't know what kind of chemicals are in them for that item to last on the shelf for a really long time. Well, guess what? The reason why the food industry does that is because they're trying to mimic what's natural. And here you got the natural version of a safe preservative, a safe way to enhance your flavor. But a lot of times the food industry, they don't use something as, 100% organic, top of the line, best quality. They're not going to use this in their commercial production to get the masses out there. They're going to use the cheapest grade possible. That's just a fact in America.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother story.
One big advantage to cooking for yourself.
Right. So we did
lots of good reasons to cook for yourself.
Let me finish this recipe real quick, and then BJ has a question. So we have 6 organic egg whites. We have a 1/3 cup of canola oil. So we stuck with the organic canola oil, and then we had a 1 1/3 cup. I used light brown sugar because that's what I have on hand. Heather, you use the dark brown sugar?
I do. I like dark brown sugar. I think it adds more caramel richness, but either one will work.
Perfect. So whatever you have in your pantry, whatever you're used to, you. Of course, a tablespoon of vanilla, and then again, those extra ripe bananas. Easiest recipe ever. Seriously, people, this is my first try at it, and I was, doing other stuff in between. I just had my timer, kept watching it and whatnot. And I'm telling you right now, I teach people how to cook, and this is something I will have as a staple. Don't even have to tell people it's IBS friendly. Just say it's a fabulous.
Yeah, don't tell them.
No, they don't. I mean, you can say it's gut friendly. You've got some probiotics in it. Who's not going to love that? Exactly.
Friendly, and it is a good recipe for people who maybe don't bake or don't think of themselves as baker or even intimidated by baking.
That's exactly
It's super fast and easy. It's really hard to mess up that recipe.
Right. Yep. You've heard it. You hear it from a chef. You hear it from Heather, the creator of it. So I highly recommend it. Okay, BJ has a question for us.
Lisa says, hi Heather, I seem to have trouble with just about anything processed, even if it's gluten-free, except sourdough for some reason. I can only tolerate sourdough, and my digestive system seems to be normalized with it. Any thoughts on why that is?
Were you able to hear all that, Heather?
Yeah. Anything processed. Oh, I sound like a broken record. Keep reading the ingredients. There's probably something in there that is bothering you. Sourdough, because sourdough is a little less popular commercially made, you tend to see better versions of it. And you have to use a real starter, like a live culture starter instead of yeast with sourdough. Yep. So it doesn't tend to be as highly processed in a lot of the versions available. That may be why you're tolerating it. Not so much something that's in the sourdough, but something that's not in the sourdough.
Right
that
on.
Is in the more processed
You just said it.
Yeah,
yes,
and there
ma'am.
is gluten in sourdough. So
there is.
If you're not reacting to sourdough, then you're doing okay with gluten, because sourdough, the only difference between sourdough and French bread is that sourdough is made with a natural starter, and other French breads and white breads are made with yeast. It's just the starter, that's the difference.
Yep. Exactly. And there's a lot of different versions of yeast, but it's still a yeast, be it live or powdered, whatnot. Now, here's a fun fact. If anybody out there is in San Francisco, I'm not just saying this, they have the best sourdough bread. That because of that live starter, it's something in the atmosphere. Like chefs from around the world can't copy it. They just can't do it. So if you're in San Francisco, bravo.
Sourdough's
and if you see,
fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you see,
if you're a home baker and interested in it, sourdough can be a lot of fun to get into. You can make your own starter, make your own culture. People share them and pass them around. They can taste different depending on the region that you're in.
Yeah.
Wild yeast that are creating that starter.
And it's just fun.
Yeah. So it's just what's going to make the bread rise as opposed to a commercial yeast. Or flatbreads would be the same thing without a yeast, and they're not rising. So it's all kind of the same basic water, flour, salt, and then what kind of rising ingredient do you add? Yeast, a natural starter, nothing for a flatbread.
Right.
It's up to you.
Perfect. Awesome. Love it. Okay, BJ, another question.
Gail wants to know if she can make these recipes we're doing with gluten-free flour.
Were you able to hear that? We can answer that one about. She wants to know if she can.
All I heard was gluten-free. What was that?
So she wants to know if she can. Your recipes in your book here that ask for flour, is she able to use gluten-free flour? And if she wants to.
Hard to give a black and white answer. Yes, you certainly should be able to do that, but you'd want to read the ingredients in the gluten-free flour.
Yes.
One of the best ones that seems to be available, Bob's Red Mill makes a gluten-free all-purpose flour substitute, and I don't think that it has anything sketchy or any IBS triggers in it. So you want to find probably some ready-made gluten-free substitute that is specifically meant to replace all-purpose white flour. And then always read the ingredients, because things that are gluten-free can add IBS triggers that wouldn't normally be in those same foods, like weird proteins, galactans, and chickpea flour, and pea proteins, or dairy, or fat. So read the ingredients, watch out for those, and if those are not in there, then yes, you should be able to just substitute on a one-to-one basis a safe gluten-free flour.
And so from a translation, from a chef's perspective, Heather just opened it up, the Pandora box. Just because it says gluten-free, buyer beware, you flip that package over, look in the back, and all that person trying to sell you a lower end product, they're gonna shove it with, they're called fillers. Fat's a filler, it's a cheap filler. So that's why, and then when you go home to bake, you're like, this gluten-free flour is terrible. Well, what gluten-free flour did you use? It really, especially with bacon, it makes a big difference.
Find one that works for you.
And here's
find
a
one
fun.
That you tolerate.
Exactly. And I agree with you. I recommend them as well. If you are, doing this, you are a celiac disease, you have to stay away. Now, if you are not, here's a fun fact. If you just want to stay away from flour in general, bread flour happens to be a lower strand, protein strand versus the white flour, and a lot of recipes can be replaced with I used a bread flour for this one. So it still has gluten, but it's a lower strand of the protein. So people who are gluten tolerant, like they're sensitive, their stomach can handle it. They're not celiac. It's not a celiac thing, but it's just a lower level. Not gluten-free, but just a lower level. And some people notice it. You know? Yep. So it's a fun
There's
fact.
a lot of ranges in that. If people really get into baking, you can get not just all-purpose flour, which most home cooks are familiar with, but you can get cake flour, you can get bread flour. They're all going to have different levels of gluten, different baking properties. Baking involves a lot of food chemistry and get really complicated.
Oh, yes. You spend hours.
But you can really get into that whole entire field. But that's also one of the reasons that some of the gluten-free flours and gluten-free products can have other strange ingredients. Gluten's a protein, and protein is important in cooking and in food chemistry and in baking. If you take that out, you have to replace it with something else, some other kind of protein.
Exactly.
That's where you end up with some weird options sometimes that wouldn't normally be in things like breads.
Right.
So you're really going to have to get into some food chemistry and to scrutinizing labels. If you have to go gluten-free, you want to go gluten-free, and you have IBS, there's going to be a lot of gray areas and things to watch out for.
Good answer. Good clarity. Okay, BJ, you have another question.
James wants to know, what's the benefits in the Heather's Acacia tummy fiber over psyllium husks for IBS?
Okay.
Psyllium?
The husk.
Two totally different kinds of fiber.
Night and day.
Yeah. So psyllium's not a soluble fiber. It's about 1/3 insoluble fiber, and that's a GI stimulant, so that can cause problems for people with IBS. Right. Psyllium in particular seems to cause gas and bloating for a lot of people. If you tolerate it, that's great. Be aware that you might not, and you might do a lot better with something that is 100% soluble fiber, and that's what the acacia and the tummy fiber is. It's literally nothing but soluble fiber. Psyllium also has a really high viscosity, so it thickens up in the glass, which can make it a little hard for people to take. There's a choking risk, and it can be a little unpleasant to try to chug it down real fast before it thickens up. And soluble fiber, the tummy fiber won't do that. It has no viscosity, so it'll disappear into water. You won't know it's there. You could sprinkle it into foods. You won't know it's there. There's no choking risk, so you don't have to try to drink it really fast. So two totally different kinds of fibers that are going to have different effects on your gut. Psyllium is definitely not going to be as stabilizing because of the insoluble fiber. And it's also not going to be a prebiotic because only pure soluble fibers are prebiotics that ferment in the gut and help to create an environment in which your natural healthy gut bacteria thrive. And that can also be actively helpful for IBS. Oh,
absolutely, 100%. Two different. So again, getting that knowledge base. The books are on sale right now. First year IBS, she goes in detail of that. She also mentions it in Eating for IBS because you need to understand your fibers. Just because somebody says fiber, don't assume it's soluble fiber, and ask that question and do your research. And don't assume just because somebody says this fiber works for me, you are IBS, that's why you're here. You need to focus on balancing out that insoluble fiber for soluble fiber, and that's why we have the tummy fiber to get you on your way there.
Fiber. It sounds so simple. It's like gluten. It sounds so simple, and then you are literally opening up this whole entire world. What kind of fiber? Gluten-free? In what way? Is it wheat-free? There's just all these other elements to both of those topics. Sounds simple, but there's a world of information behind them.
Exactly, and it's great because people are getting, aware of it, so it's neat. So again, we're on the topic of snacks. Again, both Heather and I are praising this recipe here. If you are a non-baker, if you are a baker and you love cooking in your home, you're gonna love that one because it's just so quick and simple, and it looks like you really just spent some serious time on it. So it makes you look good.
Right.
So I love that. So let's talk about some quick and easy. A lot of other communities talking about breakfast and cereals and whatnot. So I have some cream of wheat packages here, Heather, and let's talk about why, the mornings are really difficult for IBS, and you want to do stuff that's really simple, be prepared, have some bread to snack on. But I'm going to just make while you talk, Heather, about breakfast and how it affects IBS and what's good and have fun for it. I'm just taking an instant pack here, and I'm going to put 2/3 cup of hot water. I just boiled water, and I'm going to make some breakfast right here while she explains it, so how fast it is.
Oh, sure.
Okay. Go ahead.
Cream of rice can be a really good, fast, easy staple for people. Cream of wheat, cream of rice.
Okay.
They should be right next to each other in the aisle.
Yes.
Instant oatmeal packets can be a good safe staple. Leftover white rice. Heat up a bowl of white rice and add some soy milk or rice milk, oat milk, banana on top of it for extra soluble fiber. Make things like your banana breads, quick bread recipes like that in general. You can double them. If you have the baking pans in the oven, you can even triple or quadruple it and put extra loaves in the freezer. It'll freeze beautifully. So things like zucchini bread, pumpkin bread, banana bread, the chocolate applesauce cake. Those can all be good, safe, fast, easy staples for breakfast. Rice Chex, Corn Chex, Rice Krispies, Corn Flakes, any kind of rice, corn, or I don't want to say processed oat cereal, but instant oatmeal is going to be easier on your gut than something like steel cut oats.
Okay, that was a question.
Or the Scottish oatmeal. It's simply because.
So you want to go for the flat. You don't want the steel because of getting into your digestive. And Heather's talked about that before.
Yeah.
If you're going to have something in there, you want to have it as flat and as chopped up and as grind it down as possible. And the steel oats, that's the whole purpose of them, is to puff up. We don't want that in our gut.
Yes, oatmeal is inherently going to be a whole grain, one of the best tolerated whole grains in general for IBS. But they start with the whole oat groats, and then they steam them, they chop them, they press them, and you go successfully down in the levels to steel cut and Scottish, and then regular, and then quick cooking, and then instant. So there's nothing in instant or steel cut that's not also in the other version. The difference is that they've been steamed and chopped and pressed and cut, and
that's
as
all
a result,
it is.
that is really breaking down the insoluble fiber before you eat it. So instant oatmeal is probably going to be a lot easier on your gut if you have IBS than steel cut. If you tolerate steel cut, fabulous. Eat it. It's delicious. And if you're struggling with it, you might do just fine with instant oatmeal instead.
So don't disregard, don't push that off. Now you understand the whole process of it. Because some people, are trying to, steel oats are just fabulous. They, grew up with it. Well, they may have built up an immune to it too. There's other elements in there as well.
They might do just fine with them. I mean, it just depends. Sometimes people really can't tolerate oatmeal at all. Not too many of them, but some folks, they really can't. And if you're really, really struggling, drop down to something like white rice that has absolutely no fiber whatsoever. Feeling more stable, go to brown rice. Same thing with oatmeal. If you're struggling, stick to the instant oatmeal. If you're doing well, try a little of the regular. Try a little of the steel cut. Maybe mix half and half and see how you do.
Oh, I like it. I like it. I like it a lot. You're still getting the nutrients. It's not that you're missing the nutrients of it. And it's just makes a lot of people, I just see so many positive things. But again, we're all a little different. So test you, find out what works for you.
Change day to day.
Okay. Yes.
That's key to how you're doing at that time. Maybe you were doing okay with steel cut oats and now something has really upset your gut. Okay, you're going to have to be extra careful and extra stable for a while. That's okay. Get yourself stable and then work back up to your steel cut oats.
That's why it's so neat to have a reference in here. Heather has these sections that talk about specific foods, this isn't just recipes. This is eating for IBS, where she breaks these things down. So it's a lot to remember. And I mean, if we tested you after this show, I would fail. I would have to pull my cheat sheet, Heather. Now, Heather wouldn't. She wrote the book.
No.
But I'm getting better and better at it. But this helps me along the way. It's just a wonderful reference to where you're like, well, wait, what was that? Boom, you look it right up. There. It just gets you on your way to help you manage. So it's beautiful. BJ, did you have another question?
Jim just commented for the last year, he soaks his oats overnight and uses it in a smoothie, and it really soothes his morning IBS symptoms a lot. Okay.
Well, did you?
That's a good idea.
Bravo! Just exactly what Heather was talking about. She explained how it starts from the whole. So you've broken it down from A, soaking, and then you broke it down again by B, putting it in a smoothie.
Blending it.
Bravo!
Yep.
I hope he's adding some
shortcut
soluble.
Version of that is just take a little dry instant oatmeal and throw it in your smoothie if you don't have time to soak the other types of oats overnight and you're kind of desperate. Just a little handful of instant oatmeal. It'll disappear in your smoothie. You won't know it's there.
Think of that.
Soluble fiber.
Bravo! Look at the and I'm like opening up an instant one right now. What a great idea! And then that way you're going to have that nice and satisfied feeling. So here it is. I'm going to just drizzle it on here. Look at, guys, it's already broken down. You know, if you're in a hurry. Now, I'm a school of thought. I love that he soaks them. I love that he's got his system going, because you know what? It's fun for him. He enjoys it. So it's wonderful. Now, you may be hearing that going, I'm not going to soak them. There's no way. That's just not going to happen. But can you grab an instant? So good alternative there. There, Heather. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. So what else do we have here? Oh, this was fun. So another recipe that you have for snacks is the crisp Chex here, the corn and the rice. Okay, so I was in the supermarket and I, with the honey glaze, yes ma'am, I couldn't find the rice. They had the corn, but they didn't have the rice, so I thought, oh gosh, I'm not going to be able to, check this out. And they have a box that has one side's corn and the other side's rice. Do you love it?
Oh, the Crispix.
Yes. Okay.
Great. Use them.
Yes. Holiday parties are coming up, guys. Okay. We talked about office events and whatnot. There's a potluck. Hey, you want to bring some? Hey, I'm going to bring, a quick mix here. So 4 cups of 2 and 2, or I just did 4 because it's already combined. So I went ahead and did that. And then we've got 1 cup of the tiny pretzels. You put those 2 together. And then walk me through, Heather. This is the first time I'm doing this. I have the honey and the canola. Yep, canola oil. Yep. In a small bowl, I'm going to mix them. Yes?
Yep.
Okay. How did you come across this recipe?
Oh my gosh, that is something that goes so far back. I know it's a modified version of something that my grandmother made from way back, and I couldn't even tell you. It's something I've been making for so long. That I just, basically it's a much lower fat version of something that she made, but other than that, it's pretty similar. Not too many modifications to that one. And you could probably use any kind of rice or corn cereal that you wanted to. That's one where if someone did have celiac, wanted to make it gluten-free, they could use gluten-free pretzels or just omit the pretzels. Okay. That would still work.
Okay, wonderful.
That's a great little snack mix.
And oh gosh, this just blends so beautifully. I just have a little spatula right here. Nothing fancy. And it's, of course, organic, local honey, because, I want to get that into my gut, what's in the area. And that, they have a whole list of other health benefits. I don't eat a lot of honey per se, but I think this is great. If you're not a honey person, bring this to an office party. They're going to think you are the bomb. Do people still say that? I don't know. Probably just embarrass my grown children.
People do love that recipe. It is a good one for parties. It gives you something safe to snack on, regardless of what else is there. And also children love that recipe too. I
was just going to say the kiddos must really enjoy this. And too, there's memories involved. I'm sure somebody has a version of this. Heather's grandmother was not the first, to do it. So it's probably going to bring back a wonderful memory for someone. Yeah, that's what food does.
And it travels really well, too. Just put in a little Ziploc or something container, and that's a great thing to take on the road. It'll keep for, a week in the car. It's fine. Perfect. So that's a good one to have on hand. Keep it at work.
Keep it at work. I know. I was like, forget the party. I think I'm going to keep it at my desk. And you just mix it around, and then you just heat it up, correct? How do we do this?
Yeah, and the only thing to watch there is just your timing. If you're doing an oven or microwave, you don't want to burn it. So that's the only thing where there could be flexibility depending on your particular oven. You want to keep checking that and stirring it.
It's because of the sugar content in the honey. That's all you're watching out for.
Burn fast.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So no,
you're trying to get it glazed so it won't be super sticky when it dries, but you don't want to overcook it and it'll burn.
Exactly. And then we talked about, we always talk about managing IBS. So it'd be fun too to have little containers, have those, in a nice little container, not a big portion of it, small, or a little baggie, whatnot, set them to the side and grab one. And there's your little snack. So you're not sitting there trying to eat the whole bowl going, oh, now I feel terrible afterwards, even though it was great for 5 minutes, but keep it to a small portion, like Heather always recommends.
Yep, so, and that makes a big batch, so you could easily distribute that out, get a week's worth of snacks out of that very easily.
Yes. I think if you take it to that office party, you're not bringing it back. Just know that it's going to be gone.
It will disappear.
It will be gone.
I have done that.
Wonderful. So these were the few things that I had set aside, to just kind of demonstrate the ease of it. I didn't want to scare, it's a cooking show, but it's a cooking show to inspire you to, if you're not a cook, to get out there get into your kitchen. Basic things. We talked about it last week. As long as you have a bowl and you can stir, we're talking basic here. We're not, flambeing anything, and all that fun stuff.
You do not have to be fancy.
Do not have to be fancy to eat delicious. And the thing that strikes me, so many things strike me about this book, but I love how Heather talks about really changing the mindset. It's not about what you can't do. It's about what you can do. I'm a chef. I can cook anything that I want to cook. I cook for people. And for me to get excited about these recipes really shines a light as to it's not bland food. This isn't, because you can't have. No, it's let's go ahead and enjoy this while we manage our IBS. And I love that, Heather.
That's right. Yeah,
yes.
Focus on what you can eat, not what you can't eat. What can you do? What can you have? What do you like?
Exactly.
Focus on that and then expand your diet. Don't focus on what you can't have. It's all about substitution. You should not be depriving yourself. You don't have to have bland, boring food. You don't have to have a highly limited diet. Lots of good things you can eat and cook and still keep your IBS stable.
Yes, and don't be alarmed. Every once in a while, it may happen. You may have a flare. I know I read that in the community, Heather. We talk really positive because we're here to encourage you. We're here to share information with you, so help you build your knowledge base. But you can be doing everything perfect, and you may have a flare up that day. And you just might do
IBS,
it.
By definition, is chronic but intermittent.
Exactly.
One of the most frustrating things about the problem. Get yourself stable. You are doing great. Sometimes for years. Sometimes people are doing great for years.
Yes.
And then something comes along and upsets their gut, and they have an attack. And that's okay. You will get stable again. Easier to stay stable than to get stable. So hang in there. That doesn't mean that you're suddenly doing things wrong. It just means that you have a gut disorder and something. You just got to get back on track. So don't be discouraged.
Yes, ma'am. BJ, do you have another question there?
Yeah, just as we're closing down, I just wanted to see what Heather had to say about this. I've been going through the help desk, and it seems like a majority of the questions are all very similar. And I think, this might help a lot of people is that, when you sign up for this event, you got Heather's IBS tab, eating Friday IBS, 30% off until midnight. Especially the cheat sheet, there isn't a list of foods with gluten that you should be eating. Heather says there's a list of soluble fiber foods, or foods with a lot of soluble fiber you should be eating. And her number one commandment for eating Friday IBS is not to make gluten your staple. Always make sure you never eat insoluble fiber by itself. Always make sure you have gluten. No, she always says it's soluble fiber, not gluten. So there's really no commandment or requirement that you got to be eating gluten all the time or at all. I just wanted to see what she had to say about that.
No, there's no blanket statement to really make with IBS and gluten, aside from the fact that IBS does not inherently carry a gluten intolerance. So there is no blanket statement for people with IBS to avoid gluten or to choose gluten-free soluble fiber supplements. You can do both if you have gluten intolerance and IBS. You just have to focus on your gluten-free soluble fiber foods. If you're not gluten intolerant, then there's a step you don't have to take. It's one less thing you have to worry about, so don't worry about it. You can juggle those, but if you don't have to, there's no advantage to trying to do that. So if your gut tells you that you are just fine with gluten and you need soluble fiber staples and you're fine with ones with gluten, then listen to your gut and use those staples because you have IBS, you don't have celiac. If you have both, you're going to have some more restrictions, but that's okay. You can still manage both at the same time.
Yep, absolutely. So I hope y'all enjoyed. Heather, I greatly appreciate your time to talk to our community here, nice and live. And again, bravo. I can't explain how crazy good this kitchen smells with this bread.
Oh, good.
It's torturous, actually. It's wonderful.
I've been baking that for so long. I have people who remember me from high school because of my banana bread.
Oh my gosh. I love it. I can see why.
Yeah.
That's a memory maker.
I used to bake it at friends' houses.
Yes, y'all, the link is below, 30% off. These are just some of the few 175 recipes. Obviously, I'm talking about the Eating for IBS book. The products here, this is the time to actually bulk up on your soluble fiber. That's a terrible word to use for that, I just realized. But to gather your soluble fiber, because you do want to incorporate that in your... I know what I actually already drank, and I forgot to make another one. I have been sipping on my fennel tea today. And two, I'm enjoying the process because I feel good. That fennel tea just keeps that bloating down, and it preventative as much as possible. And these things do work. So
you love the fennel. I love the peppermint.
I do. And you know what? No, and actually, I was such a big peppermint person, but when I learned about the properties of the fennel, in my mind, and I'll say it out loud, fennel reminded me of, like, say, sausage, and it had like a licorice. Yeah, it just. For my
sausage, sure.
It is, absolutely. So, so I stayed away from it, but now it's like, I want to say the last 3 months, it's been like my number one tummy, so I have. But my husband loves the peppermint, so. So we're a combined family.
Yeah. And you know, it's in sausage because it's a digestive aid. So that's something interesting. You'll see fennel used in a lot of high fat, kind of hard to digest foods because it is a digestive aid. That's why it's there.
That's why it's there. Yeah. Exactly.
Have it in sausage with IBS. But
humans have known about this for, decades, for centuries. Wonderful. Well, again, Heather, we appreciate, all of your support and knowledge and just pouring it out to our community. And we're thankful for everyone out there sharing. And when you're out there, do ask questions. When you see somebody make a comment about fiber, ask the next question, what kind of fiber? If it's about gluten, dig a little bit deeper. That's how everybody grows. Ask those questions. Keep digging deeper. You're not annoying anybody. It's how you get to the level of understanding what works best for you. So we're going to go ahead and chime out here. But again, midnight tonight. Click on the link below. And again, thanks for the extension. I'll let Will know that we appreciate that, getting that out there to more people tonight. All right, guys, we're chiming out. Till next time. Remember, you are not alone.